In every human being there exists a paradox. On the surface, we present ourselves as calm, composed, and in control. Yet underneath, chaos brews like an untamed storm. Life is unpredictable. Wars erupt, economies collapse, families fracture, and hearts break. When the outer world shakes us, the question arises, how do we remain still on the inside? The answer lies not in denying the chaos, but in turning toward the very shadows we fear. For within those shadows, those hidden parts of ourselves we often reject, rests the key to inner calm. In every human being there exists a paradox. On the surface, we present ourselves as calm, composed, and in control. Yet underneath, chaos brews like an untamed storm. Life is unpredictable. Wars erupt, economies collapse, families fracture, and hearts break. When the outer world shakes us, the question arises, how do we remain still on the inside? The answer lies not in denying the chaos, but in turning toward the very shadows we fear. For within those shadows, those hidden parts of ourselves we often reject, rests the key to inner calm. Calm in chaos does not come from pretending the storm doesn't exist. It comes from knowing where the storm begins. Each of us carries within a shadow the collection of impulses, fears, and memories we choose to suppress. Maybe it is anger buried after years of being told to stay polite. Maybe it is grief locked away because vulnerability was never safe. These shadows do not disappear. They live in us, influencing our choices, shaping our fears, erupting in moments of crisis. They become the unspoken drivers of our reactions, the hidden voices whispering in the dark corners of our mind. Think about the professional who appears strong in meetings, yet secretly feels unworthy and lashes out at family after work. Or the friend who constantly avoids conflict, yet inside resents everyone who takes advantage of her silence. Their shadows are active, pulling strings from the unseen depths, steering them toward behaviors that contradict the calm image they present. It is not the outside storm that rattles them the most, it is the unresolved inner one. Recognition is the first act of courage, for it is easier to blame life's chaos than to admit the chaos inside ourselves. Yet without recognition, we become prisoners to forces we cannot name. The first step to calm is not control, but awareness. To stop and say, this is me too, even when it feels uncomfortable. It is like standing in a burning room and instead of rushing out the door, pausing to look at what fuels the fire. Recognition is not weakness, it is power, for you cannot calm what you refuse to see. Imagine standing before a mirror that reflects not just your face, but your entire being, including the parts you would rather hide. That moment of clarity can be painful, but it is also liberating. To know yourself fully, even the parts shrouded in shadow, is the beginning of true calm. There is a reason why suppressed emotions often surface during times of stress. Chaos has a way of tearing away our masks. A parent who has always tried to stay calm may find themselves screaming at a child after a small mistake. A worker who prides themselves on patience may suddenly explode in anger when confronted with pressure. These are not random outbursts. They are eruptions of shadows long ignored, and while they may leave guilt in their wake, they also offer an invitation to notice, to recognize, to finally confront what has been buried. Recognition requires honesty, but it also requires compassion. Too often, we judge our shadows harshly, labeling them as flaws, weaknesses, or failures. Yet if we treat them as enemies, we only deepen the divide within ourselves. Calm begins when we stop fighting with ourselves. To look at anger and see not just rage, but a signal that a boundary has been crossed. To look at fear and see not cowardice, but the depth of what we truly value. To look at jealousy and see not pettiness, but a longing for something unfulfilled. Recognition is not about shame. It is about seeing the truth behind the mask. I recall meeting a woman who always smiled, always helped others, always gave the impression of peace. But behind that mask, she carried years of unspoken grief, the loss of a child she never allowed herself to mourn. When she finally admitted her sorrow, when she allowed herself to say, I am still broken inside. It was as if her entire being exhaled. For the first time, her calm was real. It was not the forced calm of suppression, but the genuine calm that comes from recognition. Her shadow did not vanish, but it no longer ruled her in silence. We all have these moments where the shadow knocks at the door of our awareness. The question is whether we answer. To recognize it is to reclaim control of our inner world. It is not about eliminating the darkness, but about seeing it clearly enough that it no longer drives us unconsciously. The path to inner calm is not paved with denial, but with courage, the courage to look inward when every instinct tells us to look away. And in that act of recognition, the chaos that once seemed unbearable begins to soften, for we are no longer fighting with a stranger inside ourselves. We have begun to meet who we truly are. Once recognition has taken place, once the veil has been lifted, and you begin to see the shadow for what it is, the next step is far more radical and far more transformative. It is not enough to simply notice your inner darkness, to point at it and say, yes, it exists. Real calm in chaos requires that you do something most people fear or embrace it. Not with judgment, not with resistance, but with a willingness to listen to what it has to teach you. For the shadow is not simply a container of shame and pain. It is also a messenger holding truths about ourselves we have long ignored. Most of us are conditioned to fight our unwanted emotions. Anger must be swallowed. Fear must be silenced, grief must be hidden. Yet the more we push these states away, the stronger they become. What we resist does not fade, it festers. What we deny gains power in the dark. Imagine stuffing clothes into a closet until it can hold no more. And then one day it bursts open, spilling everything onto the floor. That is what happens when we refuse to embrace the shadow. It does not go away. It waits. And it eventually demands to be seen. Embracing the shadow does not mean indulging destructive behaviors. It does not mean allowing anger to dominate you or letting fear dictate every choice. It means allowing yourself to acknowledge what lies beneath those emotions, to sit with them without shame. Anger might reveal that someone has crossed a sacred boundary. Fear might reveal how deeply you value your loved ones. Even jealousy might reveal a dream within you that longs to be fulfilled. By listening instead of silencing, you turn the shadow from an enemy into a guide. There is a powerful story of a soldier who returned home after years at war. Outwardly he smiled, laughed, tried to blend back into everyday life. But at night the shadows came, nightmares, rage, unbearable guilt. He tried to suppress them. He drank, he distracted himself, he forced the mask of calm. But the chaos within only grew louder. It was not until he sat down with others who had lived the same pain and began to speak the truth of what haunted him that the shift began. By acknowledging his rage, his grief, his brokenness, he gave the shadow space to breathe. The very thing he feared facing became the source of healing. His inner storm, once denied, began to guide him toward compassion for others who carried the same scars. This is the paradox of embracing the shadow. What terrifies us often contains the very medicine we need. Fear teaches us where we care the most. Anger teaches us where our boundaries lie. Sadness teaches us what gives life meaning. Each shadow, when embraced, points us back to our wholeness. Calm is not the absence of these emotions. Calm is the ability to sit with them, to understand them, and to let them pass through without shattering us. Science confirms what wisdom has long known. Studies on emotional regulation show that people who acknowledge and name their emotions recover from stress more quickly than those who deny them. Acknowledgement quiets the nervous system, lowers heart rate, and brings clarity of thought. Denial, on the other hand, keeps the body trapped in fight or flight. Calm is not born from pushing the shadow away. It is born from allowing it a seat at the table. I once spoke with a young woman who spent years hiding her anxiety. She worked harder than everyone else, always smiled, always said yes, until the weight of pretending nearly destroyed her. When she finally admitted to a close friend that she struggled every day just to breathe. She expected rejection. Instead, she was met with compassion. That one act of embracing her shadow opened a door to connection, to help, and eventually to strength she never imagined. Her anxiety did not vanish, but her relationship to it changed. It no longer ruled her in secret. It became a teacher reminding her to slow down, to ask for help, to take care of herself. The moment we embrace the shadow, we stop running from ourselves. And in that moment, chaos loses much of its power. Life outside may still rage with uncertainty, but inside, there is no longer the exhausting war of denial. There is honesty, there is space, and in that space, calm is born. Once recognition has awakened you to the presence of the shadow, and once you have embraced it as a messenger rather than an enemy, a new path opens, the path of transformation. To see the shadow is powerful, to listen to it is brave, but to integrate it into your being, to make peace with it so that it becomes part of your strength rather than a hidden wound, that is where true calm is forged. Calm is not the absence of storms. It is the unshakable rootedness that allows you to endure them without losing yourself. Transformation begins when you realize the shadow is not a burden to discard, but a vital piece of who you are. Just as light has no meaning without darkness, joy has no meaning without sorrow, courage has no meaning without fear. The parts of yourself that you once rejected are not foreign invaders. They are fragments of your wholeness waiting to be welcomed home. Imagine a puzzle with missing pieces. Without them, the image is incomplete. So too is a human spirit incomplete when it denies its darker aspects. Integration is the process of picking up those lost pieces and fitting them back into the picture of who you are meant to be. Think of a tree standing in the midst of a violent storm. Its branches sway, its leaves may tear, but it does not break because its roots are deep and hidden in the dark soil. Those roots grow in silence, in places unseen. They are its shadow. Without them, the tree would topple at the first strong wind. In the same way, your own strength, your own calm in chaos, is rooted in the parts of you that live in darkness. When you embrace them, when you let them ground you, you become unshakable. Transformation does not happen overnight. It comes in small, deliberate acts of courage. It might be journaling honestly about your anger instead of dismissing it as inappropriate. It might be telling someone you trust about the fear you have kept hidden. It might be sitting quietly with your sadness, letting the tears fall without labeling them as weakness. These are not grand gestures. They are daily practices of integration. Each time you acknowledge a piece of your shadow without judgment, you weave it back into the fabric of your being. There is research that confirms this truth. Studies in psychology show that individuals who integrate their repressed emotions and memories are less likely to suffer from chronic anxiety and depression. Their resilience increases, their ability to make rational decisions under pressure improves, and their overall sense of meaning deepens. Integration is not just a spiritual idea, it is a process supported by evidence. To face what is hidden, to name it, and to carry it consciously is to free yourself from the grip of unconscious chaos. I once knew a man who grew up in poverty, ashamed of his beginnings. He worked tirelessly, became successful, wore expensive suits, and avoided all reminders of his childhood. Yet whenever he saw others in need, a deep resentment and unease stirred within him. He could not find peace, no matter how much he achieved. Only when he allowed himself to revisit his roots, to accept his story, his struggles, his scars, did the weight lift. What he had once rejected became a source of empathy, driving him to help others in ways he never imagined. His shadow, once a wound, became his gift. Integration transformed not only his inner calm, but the way he touched the world. This is what transformation looks like. Not the erasure of darkness, but its transmutation into strength. Not the denial of chaos, but the ability to carry it with grace. When you stop running from yourself, when you gather the fragments of who you are, light and dark alike, you become whole, and wholeness is where calm lives. The storm outside may rage, but inside there is a center that cannot be broken, a stillness born not of denial, but of truth.